One more day, one more day. I thank God just for one more day. One more day. The Lord has made a way. I thank God just for one more day. Hey everybody, one more day. Today being Wednesday. Happy one to you. That song just popped up in my spirit today just as I was about to record. I'm like, all right, Spirit, ain't nobody gonna keep on singing every day. But I mean, that's my number one calling in life, and I know it. But sometimes I'm resistant because I know how people can get on here. It's like, all right, girl, if you don't want nobody all up in your videos, dancing, singing. Who's old enough to remember that? What was that? The Source Awards. That's a classic moment with Suge Knight when he was throwing shade at Puffy. If you don't want somebody all up in your videos, dancing, singing, come to Death Row, and everybody's like, boo. That was a classic Source Awards. Back in the East Coast, West Coast beef. So all of this must be purposeful that I'm saying all this, because I obviously did not get on the camera to start talking about East Coast, West Coast beef. But in any event, that song was on my heart just as I was about to record. It's a very classic, old, as a matter of fact, it was in the 90s. That's how far back it stretches. It was something that was recorded back in the 90s by what's it called? It's GW, Gospel Music Workshop of America, which was a big gospel workshop they used to do. I don't know if they even still do it anymore, especially post-COVID. A lot of things kind of fell off after that. But it was a classical, infamous, I should say, really, workshop where all the greats of gospel come together to learn and create and work and, build on their craft and this and that. But anyway, that song was recorded. I forget the actual writer of the song, but I'm going to post it on the community tab. I am, because what it really speaks to, another part that I didn't go into, is where she says, time after time, I started my day with a made up mind. And I say deep down in my heart that this is the day that I make a new start. But when the end of the day is come, nothing for him have I begun. And I begin to pray for one more day. And then that's the other part that I sang. So that to me speaks about being free from procrastination, and that's something that definitely hits home for me particularly. So maybe it was a message. I think I've over the years I've definitely been delivered from a lot of my ways of procrastination, but that was something that I was definitely a culprit of, guilty of in many ways. I would put papers off to the last minute, put tasks off to the last minute, wait to the last minute to return a phone call, take care of business. I've done that in my life, but over the last few years or more, situations have kind of more or less, grown me out of that, because in a lot of ways, I just didn't have the luxury to procrastinate. I had to plan ahead and be strategic in my moves. So I thank God for that. I thank God for one more day to learn and grow. And so if that's something that you perhaps, maybe that's a thing that you maybe wanted to release at this time. And what I've come to know is that procrastination in a strange way is connected to a spirit of unworthiness. Now you can make that connection as you will, but I've heard that one time, and it rings true for me that there's a connection there where, for some reason you don't value your desire or your even your manifestations enough to be incited with the passion to pursue them immediately, or at least do as much as you can within reason, because there's always a time to act and a time to sit down. We know that, but for the most part, we're gearing up for a go, go, go type of time. With it being harvest season, as I said yesterday, with it where Pluto goes direct today, so a lot of the limitations in that regard, especially deep in the psyche, that's probably why I'm saying this, is because unworthiness is a spirit that is rampant in this deep in your psychological depths, and that's in the parts of you that you don't even realize are having an effect on the way you do life day to day. Things that are steeped onto you even from, what you've experienced in childhood, or what you've been told in childhood, what you've been exposed to or projected as a child as to what you truly are worthy for. Someone that knows that they have a righteous right to something, whether it be a wish, a desire, an outcome, whatever the ambition is, isn't really bound by procrastination to pursue it, as someone that may have a reluctance or an uncertainty or insecurity about what they're worthy to be, do, have, or receive, So I guess that's really the connection there, as best as I can express it, but maybe it makes more sense to you. And again, I had no intention just off of that one song in saying all this. So the point of the wrap up here is just to know how worthy you are to have anything that you put your mind to. Don't delay today. The cosmic current of things is always shifting us into action and reaction and regrouping and rejuvenation and regeneration. But we're gearing up into a season where you're going to feel the surge to do something powerful, and you have the supreme force and source of support behind you to get that done. So don't allow those old ways of thinking and being and believing about yourself to be the resistance for what is ultimately an open door. Open door policy at this time is what I hear. So anyway, thank God for one more day, for all the things that we put off yesterday and last week and last month and even last year, that there's still grace enough for us to get into action now. And ultimately, that even the things that we thought, we may have missed an opportunity on or delayed too long, more than likely it's been with purpose. Even for you to see the error of your ways in hindsight, to know that, okay, maybe there was a reason why something got put on the back burner or on the shelf, or I wasn't able to pull through with X, Y, and Z, or didn't, blossom the way that I intended it to then. But now, there's no excuses. There's no bindings. There's all the blockages and burdens and bindings that were very prevalent once upon a time in the not so distant past, quite recently enough as it is, are being broken off completely, especially by way of this solar eclipse that's coming up with the new moon on the 14th. You should feel completely liberated in your life force to really and truly just take over the world. However, whatever corner of the world that may be, however expansive, that may reach for you, literally whatever your ambitions are, you have the power to manifest. And this is that procrastination. This is that right here. This two of swords. This is about being resistant to making a decision, or perhaps being at a crossroads at this time on a decision, having perhaps the ambition or desire to do something, or knowing that it's just time to do something different or specific, but feeling at a pause, perhaps awaiting new information or clarity as to how you get to decide, because we know that our actions are guided by our thoughts first and foremost. It comes from having made a decision in the mind as to how we're going to exert our energy before we take a step. At least anybody that is well grounded does. Some people just act on impulse before they even think. And some people are successful in that regard too. So it's no shade. I'm a Sagittarius, so sometimes that works for us. And sometimes my Libra side, even my sun is in the second house, which is ruled by Venus. So that the Libra takes over, and sometimes I can be a little bit caught up in, this is almost being indecisive in a sense, like caught up in, do I go this way or do that? Do I go that way? Do I want this? Do I want that? Any Libra watching knows the struggle of that indecision. But then once you make a decision, it's usually pretty powerful because it's a cardinal sign. So once we make a decision, it's like full force ahead. Just prayerfully, it's a decision in the upright and in the positive sense. And that you don't want to sit in a space like this with your two swords drawn. Although sometimes I see this energy as something different, but we'll see what other cards come out. But given I just talked a hell of a lot about procrastination and decision making and knowing your power and your potential and your worthiness and all that good stuff, this makes a lot of sense to just, piggyback on that. You don't want the decision to be made for you when you have the power to do it yourself. You have the power, you have the support, and you have the, what's the other word? It was something else I heard, but now I lost it. The power, the support, and I'm saying prowess, but I know that that's not what I mean. Perhaps it is, but it's not. I'm taking those because of how they slipped up on my hand like that. And then we got the King of Cups. Let's see here. But this decision making is at the top of the spread. Now, how I also see, the Two of Swords is sometimes as a warrior, a very skilled warrior, that she's so skilled that she can fight appearingly to be blind. But we know that when she starts swinging them swords, it's like maybe, and I've been saying this for a long time, but maybe it's the decision making that is her power. Now that I'm really thinking about this, that it's not so much about physical action, physical assertion, getting up and fighting the good fight or doing anything as much as it is first, just deciding this is what I want and this is what I don't want. And that is the ultimate power for herself and for anything outside to really shift her environment by way of this looking like a her to me. But it could be masculine as well. It's only the Two of Swords. So it could be either gender, or it could be you and your feminine energy being more reserved and reactive, and perhaps we're being called in the King of Cups vibration to get more into our masculine energy, to take action, to be proactive and assertive in a certain way. But what I was going to say is that sometimes as I see her as, like, I often say, like a samurai warrior, that when she starts swinging them swords, somebody's getting chopped. And that's perhaps the power of choice that we all have, we all possess, that once you decide for yourself what life what energy you're asserting to your life experience, there's really no match for that. Once you put your mind to it, and your spirit is in agreement with it, there's really not much that can object to it or obstruct it. As I was saying earlier, there have been some obstructions, some great external interferences, some of which we had no idea were going on. I think I even mentioned, I was talking about procrastination being like a psychological, I'm hearing the word systemic. I don't even know why that applies, but a systemic issue. Interesting. I have to look that up later. But I will say connected to the root, if I can say it practically, because that's what the word is giving me vibes on, like from the stem, from the root, something that's deep-seated from perhaps before you were even aware, by way of the Two of Swords, of who you really are. Before you were making powerful decisions on your own, there were energies that were projected or even impressed upon you that we just absorb as the empathetic creatures that most of us are as human beings, the spongy creatures that we are, that we pick up the cues and signals and synchronicities from our environment. Some of them are very positive and some of them not so much. And then we become adults and it's up to us to make the decision as to what is working for us and what is not anymore. And that's a hard crossroads to be in, right? Because that's cause for a disconnection from long existing sometimes people, places, and things, but more importantly, mindsets is what the swords is representative of. Things that we've been comfortable thinking about ourselves, about our situations, about our possibilities, that just make sense, because they've always been true in some way, shape, or form. And in my regard, when I think about procrastination, things always kind of worked out for me. Even when I may have waited to the last minute to do a paper, I still got the good grade. Or, sometimes I probably could have gotten a better grade, but for the most part, it's never really truly been to my detriment, more or less. So sometimes it's hard to see the invitation for, or the opportunity for a shift, when for the most part, your behavior is, I wouldn't say rewarded, but not as restrictive in the things that you want to create for yourself. But again, I'm a Sagittarius. I have a lot of luck energy in my chart, so do not follow my lead. You can get yourself in trouble. I'm a different breed for real. So, thankfully things work out for me, but for the most part, it hasn't cultivated the greatest habits over time, I would say, because you can call to be more prepared in life, and that would allow you to be more grounded, which ultimately cultivates more confidence and and self-assuredness, which has always been kind of like a toss-up in some regard for me. So there's an upside and a down, regardless of who's listening and considering what I'm saying. But someone that is sure of self, sure of her own personal determination, she realizes the power that she has to just believe, to make an assertion about a thing, and that thing is, with the support of Supreme Source, just as easily said as done. You know what I mean? Knowing that that's where the power truly lies, that she doesn't have to get up as much as she just needs to decide, to really just say, this is what it is for me. And I'm not allowing anybody, that's where the block comes in, where it's more of a defense, for anyone to change my mind on the things that I've decided for myself. That's a powerful position to be in. So we got the King of Cups, who's that compassionate king, kind of like daddy vibes, a little bit. We got the Ten of Pentacles, which can definitely be family vibes. And then we got the Five of, this is interesting. This is giving me family and almost like conflict, confusion, or chaos, like of whence a person such as this has come from, when I'm saying that it's an energy that has come from, past experiences, upbringing, projections, perhaps even. That's what this energy is giving me here. This is all about family. This literally could be pops. This could be the generations with the Ten of Pentacles. This could be some type of tussle over energetic control in some regard. So it could be that in one way, given the more or less the trend right now is that people are ascending, they're changing, they're shifting into ways of being that they haven't been before, and sometimes it does cause a bit of conflict or confusion among family and or friends that have known you a certain way and have grown to be comfortable with you in a certain regard and connected to your energy in some way, and even to count on you being a certain way in which now you've shifted into another state of mind. Let's put it in the perspective of the swords. Sometimes that can cause a bit of a disturbance by way of the people closest to you that more or less, have an invested energy and your energy invested in that dynamic in the way that it always has been. So I can see this. I'm going to pull some more cards because I can see this in two different ways, because we got the Ten of Pentacles here, which is definitely a great card in essence, but the Five of Wands is what is giving me literally the tug of war right now, like me being at a crossroads as to how I'm going to express this, because there's some inheritance or some great fortune here with the Ten of Pentacles. Perhaps even the inheritance doesn't have to be material, although there's definitely that implication with Pentacles, that is something physical, material, measurable, but it can also be gifts, is how I've been seeing Pentacles lately. Like this overflow of generational wealth by way of gifts and abilities and powers, like the adverse of carrying over the toxicity and trauma of your past experiences, your upbringing, your childhood, as I was speaking about in terms of procrastination and other, not just procrastination, because that's probably the lightest, expression of psychological, let's say, underdevelopment, or I don't know how else to say that, where it's something that you definitely would want to tap into and figure out why do you do that, to see where the root and the connection is. But it's not like the worst thing you could possibly experience, but it does connect to unworthiness, which does have an effect on how you manifest, which is what the Ten of Pentacles is. It's your access to wealth, the wealth that is due to you, and the potential to create a generational legacy that gets to be passed down beyond your years, beyond your existence, perhaps. There's an access available. Like I was saying, there's open doors now. There is wide open for us to walk right through and really have whatever it is we put our minds to, just by way of deciding to do so. But there's some conflict here against that development that I'm seeing. And I'm seeing the King of Cups as like a father figure on the outside looking in, perhaps wanting to have some control over this this dissemination of what is it? It's an emotional attachment too with the King of Cups. And with the King of Cups, this could be Scorpio energy, but it can be any of the water signs, but particularly Scorpio is the fixed sign that usually is most associated with the kings. It could be an emotional attachment to authority, because as I'm seeing here with the Ten of Pentacles, there's a presence here, and he's kind of like hidden, like if I pick the card up, you'll see exactly what I'm saying. Maybe I just should and not speak about it, but be about it, right? This energy here is like an older man, maybe a grandfather, maybe an uncle, but some type of elder. But sometimes I see him as kind of on the outside looking in of this legacy that's developing. And, you know, yeah, that's what I'm feeling here. That someone is feeling like they're the odd man out of this legacy that is evolving. And what I'm getting is it's because, based on what I've been talking about, it's because of a resistance to changing or flowing with the King of Cups water energy, flowing with the current of evolution, literally getting with the times, you know, maybe perhaps stuck in his own ways about how the maybe he, you know, is more or less like the patriarch of the family, and he has an ideal of how things should be, how they should operate, how they should run, what is acceptable, what's unacceptable, what's, you know, the family way. You know, ultimately he has a certain emotional attachment or opinion to what that gets to be and what it isn't. And here lies the conflict, because the evolution by universal order is calling for a shift in mentality for all. And this, I feel like this Two of Swords energy is someone perhaps that's been called, you know, many of us probably that are even listening now have been called to some responsibility in their lineage and their legacy to lead a charge in one regard or another, just by way of you making the decisions for yourself. You know, it doesn't mean that you have to save your family or you have to drag your family into the same ideals and views that you are upholding. But it has been a call for us to have an establishment of our own point of view and stand firm on it in the ways that we've been ordained to do so. And a lot of that sometimes does look very different from what we've always been grown or raised to idealize. For instance, just simply put, by way of religion or spirituality. I can speak to that greatly because I grew up very, you know, traditionally Baptist. Father's a preacher, pastor, well, preacher, you know, more or less, but he's a leader in the church. You know, he's the minister of music, and there are certain traditions and conditions in religion that don't really allow for any other spiritual concessions, I'll say it that way, i.e. tarot cards. So for me, introducing this as my spiritual expression in the way that I have had, it's not so much anymore, but it was very much so a tug of war in my own spirit, in my own psyche, whereas now it all comes together, whereas I even did procrastinate moving out and being consistent in my spiritual expressions in other channels and on other platforms, because I was always kind of, you know, being tugged between, well, I know my family doesn't agree with this. I know by tradition and condition, my religion, as I was associated with it, doesn't, you know, it shuns upon this as witchcraft and, you know, all these other things and abomination to the Spirit of God in its most sanctified form. But on my side, you know, it's like the angel pulling me in this regard is saying, no, this is an open door for you. I need you to be a light in a dark place, which tarot can be very dark. It can absolutely be dark, and people absolutely use it for, you know, for purposes of exploitation. One of my first encounters ever with a very gifted spirit, she exploited me a little bit in some regard, because not because she lied to me, because she gave me information that actually proved to, you know, be revelation later on in my life, you know, proved itself to be true, but she charged me a hell of a lot for it. And, you know, in some regards, you're not, in some beliefs, I'll say, you're not supposed to be charging for your gifts anyway, but you're definitely not supposed to be robbing people blind. When you have a gift, you're supposed to be of service with it, more or less. Doesn't mean that you're supposed to give it away completely in sacrifice, because even in the Bible, it says that, you know, prophets, you should take care of your prophets. However, you're not supposed to exploit the people, especially when you have an advantage of insight and intel that is supposed to be of a healing practice or service to whomever you're connecting with. So all that to say, I know the dark and the light sides of it, but obviously to me, and as I exemplify or try to exemplify here, it's about the expression of the heart, which God knows. And that's how God calls you, by way of your heart and what he sees, or he, she, it, because I don't really see gender. That's another expression of my former more religious background, is only referring to God in a specific gender, when I don't believe there is any gender. I believe it's a spirit, a force, and it encompasses all, just as we are a reflection of it. So there's even that, yet again. But all this to say, because I know I'm talking a lot about myself, but I think it's the point here that there is a bit of there was, for me, an example, a bit of a resistance and a tug of war that manifested within my own spirit, and I would say in some ways did delay me from fully enveloping myself in what I felt called to do, which is ultimately not just read tarot cards, but to express myself intuitively in the way that I feel led and guided to. The tarot cards just happen to be a tool. I sit down and write and scribe just as clearly and prophetically as these cards speak sometimes. I sing in prophetic ways. Like, it's just a gift that I've come to know that I embody by way of my lineage. My ancestors did it in different ways. Many are preachers, many are singers, many are psalmists, write music. Many have the gift of spiritual expression in ways that are much more conventional, and some of them are healers, that used it in very unpractical ways. And I feel like we're coming to a point where, like I said, the door is open and the flow is free, and those that are willing to receive it by way of the decision to be a receptive force, literally an open vessel, are being poured into. And that's why I'm saying, like, inheritance is not just about money. It definitely does express itself materially, especially when you handle it well, when you invest it well in yourself and in your surroundings, your energy, your time, your creativity. It does ultimately manifest into a material measurable wealth, in a sense, something you can actually hold in your hands, see in your bank account, because when you're walking in the way of your calling, whatever that may be, however strange it may seem, however much resistance it may cause in the people that feel that they have your best interest at heart, or may even have known you before you knew yourself, or had a certain expectation on your life before you even knew what what your possibilities were. It's you operating in the courage to move in the space and strength that you've been called to, that ultimately affords that reward in return. That's the universe, like, meeting you where you are, to be the standout in your generation, to perhaps do something that maybe generations before you didn't have the luxury to do. Because this is, when you think about it, here in this century, in this time, on this timeline, I still was in a tug of war with my spirit in this most liberal time that we've ever probably seen, up until now. There was still a tug of war even on me, someone that more or less is very liberal, even by way of my birth chart. The aspects that are there speak to a liberation, a freedom, Sagittarius being my sun sign, to be adventurous, especially about ideals and spiritual things, to always be seeking wisdom and truth and the greater ideal of life, the meaning of life, even, so to speak, in a very spiritual and what's the other word, philosophical way. There's no containment in that. And yet still I felt a containment, because I felt like I had a duty to honor, in some regard, my parents' reputation and their expectations, and the folks that I loved at my church, which is that song that I sang today was one that one of the choirs used to sing all the time, one of my favorite songs. And I felt like in some regards I was disappointing those that have nurtured me since I was a child. But when it all comes down to it, this conflict all on the outside has really no, it has no, what's the right word? It really just, it doesn't have, I almost want to say it doesn't matter, because it really doesn't. It only really serves to keep you bound and stuck and stagnant from procrastinating your future. And this could be, I'm expressing it by a way that's very personal to me to make it clear and plain, but it could be something else in your life that you feel a resistance to, you feel an expectation to, responsibility to, that really is more self-imposed than it truly is justified. You know, we're not talking about general responsibilities to, say, your children that you love, or your spouse, or, you know, things of that sort. The job that you've agreed to take on, you have a responsibility there to fulfill your duties. We're talking about where you may be overexerting yourself, overextending yourself, or even contracting yourself, making yourself smaller to fit into a containment that was just never built for you. It's not meant for you to fit that mold. So I guess it's all making sense, especially from beginning to now, as to why I'm saying these things, because we're in a harvest season where we're not just harvesting ideas and new businesses and more money and a new house and a new car, but we're harvesting the best of ourselves, literally transmuting our spiritual energy into material matter in the most impractical, unconventional ways that have never been seen before, quite honestly. Not only does it look different from those that are surrounding you and around you, it looks different from every corner of consciousness, from the highest to the lowest, far and wide. The human spirit is evolving in ways that it never has before. And I think the reason why I'm probably saying all of this is because of this something big is probably coming by way of this solar eclipse, which I'm not going to completely talk about today, but it's in a couple of days. What's that? I'll take that. Where, you know, change is underway. And it's also, I heard someone say something to the effect that something about acceptance, a day of acceptance, or a shift, something about acceptance. So maybe perhaps what's been cultivating in you that you have been more or less faced with making a decision on or of or about is something that's being solidified for this next cycle that we're approaching, you know, that we're diving into, where the things that you're doing now are almost life or death, in the sense that they are going to create the quality and quantity of your most supreme life experience. So you literally have the choice as to whether you're going to answer to the call of projection and the perception of who you should be, and the I don't know, like the confinements of what society tells you ought to be. Like, every which way you can consider it. It really comes down to, is it in alignment with what you know of yourself, what you've already made a decision on deep inside? Maybe you haven't taken the action for it, but you know what makes you happy. You know what brings you peace. You know what brings you joy. You know what excites you. You know what incites your ambition, your love for life. You know whether it's that job or that relationship, or even those family and friends, as opposed to maybe perhaps being in solitude, or changing careers, or starting your own business, or releasing yourself from that connection that you don't feel she doesn't really know you anymore, or doesn't support you at the self that you know you're ultimately evolving into. It's the decisions that we're making now that are ultimately going to set us up for generations to come. Set you up in this life to harvest a great deal and set up the harvest for your legacies, a dynasty, a divine dynasty, in fact. Okay. So we got and this is under the king, who is more or less the compassionate king. And it's unfortunate that we got this heartbreak card under here, because perhaps your decisions may cause some discomfort, maybe even some heartbreak, some sadness in others, but this is the evolution here with the Wheel of Fortune. This is the turn of the wheel that none of us can escape. So anyone that is, I would say, so invested in what your decisions are, as if, they directly impact them, even if they do, it's still like your parents love you, but they have to let you go in ways that may be uncomfortable, especially if you're an adult, you know what I mean? And your friends may have a energetic connection to you, and they, may be vying for your time and your life force, because they're used to having, that, what's the word? Access to your energy and to your life. But if there's a decision that gets to be made where you pull back a little bit, there may be some disappointment that comes with that. But what it comes down for you is, are you going to sacrifice yourself, literally slit your own wrist for the sake of satisfying those that have an expectation of you or for you? Or are you going to answer to the highest calling? This is you sitting at the top of this structure, not quite a pyramid, but this structure of sorts. It's you that ultimately holds the power in your hands for your fortune, your greatest fortune in life. And this is the Wheel of Fortune by God, which is not just about evolution and the life cycles that I was talking about. Actually, like a Jupiter cycle, 10, 12 years is what you're setting yourself up for now. For some, eternity. Like I said, this is generational wealth beyond what you can even experience in a lifetime. This is beyond you and even before you, that you're being accounted for now, responsible for in a great way. What are you going to do about it? This is like evolution looking at you in the face, and you're sitting here in this, a lot of masculine energy, by the way. And I could speak on that in another regard, because this could also be tug of wars of different potential suitors in your life. Like I've definitely spoken about relationships that some want to lay claim to you for their own self-gratification. The King of Cups ideally would be definitely like a loving king in the highest vibration, but here he's hovering over this heartbreak card. This is toxicity, this is pain, this is turmoil, this is trauma. What's in that cup really and truly that's being offered. The King of Wands is hovering under this this ego trip right here. So this competition and chaos. Now he's outside of it, so there's hope, and he's on top of it, so there's hope there that it is pure. But ultimately, you can't even be swayed, especially as a feminine, as I'm identifying on the top of this deck. You can't even be swayed by potential suitors or partnership in your life, as this is prime time for such. I heard the note in my spirit the other day that it's cuffing season on two accounts. It's cuffing season where people are partnering up, and it's cuffing season where maybe practically or just emotionally so you can find yourself attached to things that are not favorable by way of making the wrong choice. This is why I'm saying, like, it's literally life or death. So something that looks good, looks familial, seems like the obvious choice to make because it's what you've always done, may be a cause of conflict and confusion in your life, and to keep you bound to an unfavorable, literally being on the bottom of this Wheel of Fortune, on the bottom of this Wheel of Karma, starting a new cycle in a very unfavorable way. this is upright and it's under the Ten of Pentacles. So the hope and idea here is that you are in alignment, literally, for a very favorable and fruitful life cycle, at least for the next 10 to 12 years, perhaps beyond that, just by way of deciding that you are deserving and worthy of that inheritance, that passing down of the torch. The outside, your surroundings, which is perhaps why the swords are up in the first place, justifiably so. As I said, she gives me warrior vibes sometimes, may be trying to project to you their own ideals of what you should be to be deemed worthy of that inheritance, what you should feel, what you should do, how you should act, how you should present yourself, what you should reject, what you should accept, like just trying to impose their way of philosophy onto you, more or less for the purposes of either obstructing this what do you call it, like when the inheritance, I'm hearing deliverance of this inheritance, but ultimately you being delivered into your greatest potential at this point. People might have stuff to say about it, and like I said, it's like literally two different vibes. It could be some people that really at least present themselves to have your best interest at heart, or it could be those that you know for sure and for certain without a shadow of doubt mean you know good. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter the come from, the intention, the source. It doesn't really matter the motivation, because either one could be an obstruction to this divine calling of sorts, this what do you call it, this evolvement. I don't even know what you want to call it, but this is like, you moving forward, simply put. Either one could be an obstruction to that if you're not going to be certain and sure about how you get to move forward, making decisions on what is righteous and sanctified to your path specifically. Everybody has their thing. And like I didn't finish the thought, but any energies that are that involved, let alone vexed, as with the Five of Wands here, about where you're headed in life, that's a red flag. I don't care who it is and why they are expressing themselves the way that they are, what intentions they say that they have. Everybody at this point in time should be so focused on their path forward that you don't even have time to worry about what somebody else is doing. I don't care who you are. Mother, father, sister, brother, cousin, friend, foe. If you are worrying about how someone else is moving forward in life, you are most likely moving backwards at this time, because everybody is holding their own responsibility and accountability for their existence now and how they're projected forward. And if you're not focusing on you, you're probably missing the mark in some regard. And with this Wheel of Fortune turning ever so certainly, you definitely don't want to find yourself at the bottom of that wheel on account of worrying about what somebody else got going on. Yeah, and here's the Hierophant, which is, these, and see, I can now I'm hearing it in a universal way, and I didn't even feel like getting into that today. Because we know that the powers that be are trying to stop this evolution process by causing chaos and confusion in the land, or just projecting it to us as like our focal point, so that you almost don't know where your future holds by way of the Two of Swords, which way you should go, how you should think about life, what's true, what's false, what's real, what's fake. People closest to you that are, holding you hostage by emotional and spiritual cords, that should have been severed long time ago. That's how they're almost being used as agents of this greater force and source by way of the powers that be. And some of them know it and some of them absolutely don't. But it's to perpetuate, this is what it is, trying to take us back into this cycle of trauma and fear is what the Three of Swords is. The fear, trauma, worry, back, like I was saying in the beginning, those cycles of psychological despair that ultimately keep you from knowing exactly what you're worthy of. And therefore, if you can't know, you certainly can't see. You can't see, you can't conceive it, and you can't achieve it if you're not out of a certain cycle of life force that would tell you that you're not worthy of it in the first place. That's what the powers that be want to keep us on that hamster wheel going backwards when the wheel is pushing. It's pushing. It's like earthbound entities can't hold it back anymore. That's why they're fighting amongst themselves, literally, those that even tried, whether it be intimately so, generally, globally, or universally so, that have tried to stop this forward movement, this evolution of spirit. It's not possible to do so when they're putting themselves in more turmoil to try, because people are much more in a position to protect their own energy. This is like protecting your mentality, standing your ground on what you believe in, what you know to be true for you, and building a fortress by way of that truth, and not allowing anyone that's trying to come up against it to pierce that understanding of yourself, no matter what. And then doing whatever it takes to secure that state of mind amidst a huge power by way of the Hierophant, because this is the system. And systems, the pillars of establishments in our society that ultimately have been ordained by man. Not necessarily in one regard it's the God card, but really God is more represented in this Wheel of Fortune here as divine evolution, natural evolving that happens from the cosmos, from beyond us in the natural form, than it is this man here that has exalted himself as some authoritative spiritual figure or religious figure. This is actually even representation of religion, as I've said in sharing my story of the resistance, literally, not really me, but how I was saying, like me protecting myself against everyone's opinions, projections about what I should be doing, coming from, this is a home life, but that's actually a positive progression. But in this case of allowing outside forces to dictate to you what is holy, what is sacred, what is sound, what is admissible by God, what is acceptable, what is sanctified, what is sacrilegious. These men and women, but I'm saying men in a general sense, that have been exalted by us, by men, ultimately men that are in positions of any religious authorities, more or less are delegated by men, either voted to be so or appointed to be so. Yes, there is the implication that there's an anointing by spiritual source and force by God, but ultimately it's like, I was thinking about this the other day, it's like the difference between Samuel and Saul. Samuel had an appointment as a prophet by way of the Holy Spirit, by way of God itself, in reference to the Bible himself. Saul, am I saying that right? It is Saul, right? Yeah, Saul. Saul was a king that the people wanted. He didn't even really want the job, and in the long view of it all, he wasn't even really qualified to do the job well, because he ended up being demoted and sat down, and then King David took over as, the appointed king that was anointed by God, i.e. through the appointment of Saul, again, a prophet. So it's like there are prophets in the land that have been ordained by way of their lineage, divinely so, that are now evolving into their rightful position of authority, of power, of even just awareness at this point. Some people don't even know that the gifts that they possess are of a prophetic nature. It could be the simplest of things, but when you can bring a message and bring clarity and healing and truth to people that otherwise may be in the dark or may, be unaware of even who they are, the possibilities that they possess, That's a prophet. That's prophecy at its finest. There are a lot of energies that have promoted themselves or been promoted, as I said, i.e. King Saul, who actually hid from his promotion when the people ultimately wanted him. You know what I mean? When the people appointed him, he hid because he didn't feel worthy in his own right to lead people. He didn't feel that he was powerful enough he didn't feel like he was the man for the job. And then ultimately he was for a time, because he had, that connection of the anointing by way of, and what's the name, Samuel's guidance, of course. But the minute he disconnected from that source, which was divine, is when he had ultimately effed up and ended up getting demoted, So it really comes down to the source that you are most connected to, is what I'm trying to say. Saul was appointed by the people, not really divine by God or by universal force, by supreme force, even though God allowed it. God will let people be in positions. There's plenty of preachers running around here that say they were called to the ministry and have adorned themselves with the robes and the achievements and the accolades, and even have, surrounded themselves with the congregation as seen here. But it doesn't necessarily mean they have the anointing to truly lead the people to healing and to their own power and potential from within. That's what a true prophet or a true spiritual leader does. It's not about lording over others and assuming the power for self, or controlling the moves and the vibrations of others to do what you think is best for them or what you think is righteous, because what may be righteous to you may not be so for the next man who has his own calling, his own gifting, his own path to proceed on. So this is protecting yourself from those energies that ultimately we have appointed, whether it be by way of a religious nature, even a spiritual nature, because that happens too. As I said, tarot is not, it's not the utopia of spirituality. There's a lot of dark stuff that goes on behind those cameras of people that you listen to the most and that you feel are most insightful. And some of them absolutely have gifts, but not everybody is healed in the way to even guide you in for your greatest good as they project themselves to be. So this is not limited to religion. I'm not a religious basher. I'm about opening your mind universally to what the supreme source has to speak to you specifically, individually. That's my come from. If it's through religion, then that's what it's through. That's where my roots are. What do you hear me every other day? I'm singing a gospel song, and then I'm singing something hood, and then I'm singing something sexy, and then I'm singing it's however I feel guided, and I'm unapologetic about it. But that's my supreme source guiding me. That's what I answer to. That's my calling, to be universal in my expressions. It may be something far more specific or even stringent or structured than that for you. And it's not up to me to say that it's this one way or that. What I do speak against is the misuse of power in powerful positions by way of teachers and preachers and so-called leaders and authorities that have positioned themselves or been seated in high places, but are not honorably carrying out that responsibility. That's a different abomination than someone that just worships different than you, or believes God is called by a different name, or doesn't believe God at all, or believe in God, or believe in Jesus, or you believe Buddha, and you are a Hindu, or however you serve. I believe that there is space for all in all of this universe for us to worship very uniquely and still be just as sanctified in our own spiritual nature as the next man, as long as it's pure, as long as it's not hurting anyone, it's not an infraction on anyone else's stability, soundness, as represented here with the Four of Wands, people being grounded in the home and establishment that they're creating, not impelled by outside forces that are ultimately gatekeeping the way of spiritual sanctity and satisfaction, keeping people feeling like they're not privy to this an ascension, ultimately is what I'm speaking of in practical spiritual terms, is like to be ascended beyond what is just tangible, the limitations that have been projected to you, what's been told that you are just good enough for or not good enough for, or what you're worthy of, or what you're capable of, what you're privy to. This is the energy that gatekeeps that information in the lowest vibration, especially under this Three of Swords. Like I said, some leaders don't even know that they're practicing in that regard, because, as I've said in previous messages, toxicity and trauma has become such a tradition in our way of life that we don't sometimes even know any better until we do. And then you have the forces that push up against you to try to make you fall back into this indecision, as if, no, you don't know no better, and you're misguided, or you're not mature enough or evolved enough to have a certain opinion, or make a certain establishment of creative thought, or be an independence about what you believe and what you subscribe to, because for the sake of basically like pressuring you into conformity all over again, going backwards on the wheel, when collectively we're all moving forward. The only way you're not moving forward is if you choose not to. You choose to hold your ground onto things that are not even serving you anymore, if you're honest. There are religious leaders that are still doing church. I'm saying church because that's what I know, but there are preachers and pastors that are still operating church the same old way that they're used to, because that's what they're accustomed to, and they're almost afraid to do anything different, because this is tradition, this is convention, and anything outside of that box is, against Christ or an abomination to God, when everything around you is screaming that the people want something different. They want something more. They need to be nurtured in some different way. When you're no longer really filling the seats, that means that the people are not being served in the way that their souls are desiring to be so. So then it becomes a question, and this is in any regard, because even, in anything that you do, not to say you're doing it, I'm a poster child for that, not doing it for likes and subscribes and for popularity, but there should be some exhibition, some evidence of growth in what you're doing. Since I started this channel from scratch, I've grown faster in this short amount of time than I've grown in any other space, because I've started this channel being certain of who I am, what I'm capable of, what's possible for me, what my potential is, and how I'm here to serve, how I'm called to express my energy. Starting with that made up mind is what ultimately has multiplied just this little platform, because I've abandoned all the rest where I didn't feel called to express myself. I didn't feel nurtured in that space. I feel the synergy here. I feel the spirit here. And if I had delayed my decision to start over because I didn't want to lose my connection to the other channels, I didn't want to lose, I had much more followers and friends on Facebook and Instagram than I have here even now, because I had accumulated that over time. But here is where I feel the spirit. I feel safe and secure to express myself freely. I feel that those that I'm connecting with here are connecting because they find value in what I have to say by way of the spirit that speaks to me and through me. Why keep beating a dead horse in places and spaces that aren't open, aren't well receiving you, that are not engaging with what you have to offer? Sometimes it calls for you to stand out amongst the crowds, do something different, stand up for what you believe in against the grain of in every regard. In my case, in my life, in every regard, because even my friends don't understand me anymore. Well, so-called friends, some past, some, beloved, but for the most part, there's a lack of understanding even there, where they thought they knew me one way, but deep down, this is always who I've been. And if you really think about it, friends that know me, you know that this is who I've always been. I just spoke in a different language before, and I wore a different mask because ultimately I didn't want to cause dissension and discomfort among those that had an expectation for me to be a certain way for them and to them. So allow me to reintroduce myself in the words of Hope, okay? This is who I am, an expression of the divine, unapologetically so. And the purpose of all of this, I believe, is to encourage you that with each day, each breath that you have in your body, to be intentional about expressing your highest vibration, regardless of what anyone has to say about it, whomever connects to it or doesn't, understands it or refuses to, accepts it or rejects it, supports it or aborts it, okay, for lack of a better word, tries to anyway, because there's that, where the resistances that I spoke of from an external point of view are some of these very energies that, because they thought they knew what was best for you or just didn't believe that you did, they tried to push up against it, resist your progress, literally obstruct your path forward. And that door has evolved shut, and a new one is opening into a place where you know exactly who you are. You have the confidence, the ambition, the courage, the strength, the power, and the creativity to build a home and a legacy that is secure and sound by way of what is ordained to you. You as the prophet of your life, of your existence, as as Samuel, not Saul. Saul has anointed too, so no shade to him, but you're not looking to be ordained by the people. You're not looking to be accepted or rejected by the people. You're looking for your affirmation to come from a much higher source and force than all of it. And that's what is ultimately your divine inheritance in this season, right here, right now, already due to you, perhaps already in your possession, just by way of you deciding to receive it. And it's ultimately opening the doors to all the stability and grounding, peace and harmony that you could possibly acquire and require for your most supreme experience of life in this lifetime. Oh my God, and here's the star. Okay, that's not an emergency. I'll be out in a second. The star is the energy here. You are that star by way of following the North Node, is which all I've been talking about here. Ultimately, I talked a little bit about my birth chart too. Following, if you're into that sort of thing, which I definitely encourage you to at least take a look, investigate yourself, because that's the most detailed expression and unique expression of you that you can tangibly come across by way of the alignments that were in the cosmos when you were born. And your North Node, your I always say midheaven. I think it's midheaven, but I usually say midhaven. But your North Star, your North Node, is ultimately what tells you what you get to aspire to be, do, and create in this lifetime. Your aspiration, almost a blueprint of sorts, not detailed, but depends on how detailed you get into it. But it could just at least give you an overview of what to look forward to and see how your steps are being ordered for you by the divine, and whether or not you're actually in alignment with that path or going in the opposite way to your South Node, which is the most comfortable aspect of you, obviously, where you feel more confident because it's something that you've always been doing, more or less kind of what I'm talking about here, how you've grown up, how you've been cultivated to be, created to live by way of those that ultimately have been guiding your existence before you had the power to do so. It's always calls for us in each breath of life to be looking higher, to go higher, not lower, but higher, to a new ascension, as I have called it out, of existence by way of that North Star. And that's something that's unique to everyone. Even if you have the same sign in your North Node, your calling is still going to look different because you carry a different life experience that attributes to that expression. For me, mine is Cancer. Now, I have a religious background, Capricorn, which would be more of the structure by way of the Hierophant in some regard. It's not the Hierophant, but that's what it gives, more structure and stability, and more about, conventions of society, which would be the representation of religion in that regard. That's my South Node. I was called to answer to Cancer, which is more universal existence. The moon is the ruling energy of Cancer. It's watery, it's the spirit of the matter of man from the woman's perspective, with the moon being a feminine energy. It's also very much about intuition and emotional intelligence and even psychic prowess and powers. Something that by religious standards I was taught was demonic, but in actuality, it is something that I'm being called to dive deeper into and to go higher to explore. So if I resist that calling by way of what I've literally been designed to do, I ultimately diminish my light from shining as brightly as it's been, that I've been gifted to do so, which puts others in puts me in a position to be more dim of a light. As I said earlier, there should be a light in a dark place. Who's going to see me if I'm not shining to my fullest capacity? And I don't mean being seen by way of celebrity, or this is not that. We're not talking about celebrity when we're talking about the star per se. We're talking about being healed, whole, and complete in who you feel divined and designed to be. If I had resisted that by way of what was comfortable for me, which I could have been a preacher 10 times over by now, because that calling is in my blood, to be literally a certified, ordained minister at this point in time, or to continue on in more of the structured expression of religion that I do feel very comfortable in, and believe it or not, which comes very natural to me because that's where I've grown. That's what has nurtured me into the person that I've become. But there's always more is the point. There's a higher calling. There's more to expand into. There's no box, as a matter of fact, when it comes to God. There's no containment. There's infinite possibility, which is a representation of the star here. To me, in a religious sense, that's what Jesus represents, but infinite possibilities, unlimited potential is what we are to perceive ourselves as when we look into the reflection of Jesus, through his life and his example. To me, that's what I take back from it, that I'm to follow my North Star, just as the shepherds followed their North Star to find Jesus in the first place, and that star was hovering over him because he was born already occupying his destiny. Ultimately, that's what that expression means, that he came fully equipped, ready to go. And the only difference between me and Jesus is that I had some things that I had to release and purge before I could shine in the capacity of my destiny. And that's the test and trial that we all have. But knowing that possibility is there by way of the reflection of Jesus is the hope in itself, that if it's already been done, then it's possible for you to do it too. And you have permission by way of the supreme source, not the surrounding force, but the supreme source, to do so without delay. Yep. And this is that outside looking in energy with the Nine of Wands. This is like the I always say that wrong, PTSD of ultimately answering to this life cycle where you keep doing the same things, and expecting a different result. You get caught up in the whirlwind of chaos, conflict, and competition. You get caught up in others' expectations. You get wrapped up in your own indecision or paralysis, analysis, maybe perhaps is what that represents, of what you should do and what you shouldn't. You get caught up in, the traumas and toxicities of life, which are very, very real. This is the energy of someone that is a wounded warrior, but is looking towards that healing. So it doesn't mean that we don't have something, as I've said, something to overcome, some trial and test to transcend. We all do in some way, shape, or form. Even if you had the best life, if you're still operating in your South Node and you're not answering to that aspect of you that seems a little strange to jump into, because it almost seems like adverse to who you've always been, but really it's not. When you examine it, it's very much so in alignment. It's just a different expression and a different projection, but it looks different from what's been projected around you. And you've been fighting the good fight all your life, as we do as humans, to just be societally acceptable, to not be the odd man out, to do things within the confines and conformities of what is conventional. We do that as humans. That's the iniquity that we have to pierce through to get to this ultimate place of just like pure, look, I'm not even supposed to show the star card because she's naked, but I'm not monetized, so it really don't matter at this point. But this is someone that's just like naked and unafraid, just pure in their energy and how they express it. Uninhibited is what I really want to say. An exhibitionist in the spirit in some regard, not worried about who's looking, who got something to say, who's judging her figure, who's appalled by her nakedness, who thinks she should be pouring it all into the water or all into the land. This is someone that's focused on her own path, or his own path. I'm just saying her because obviously she got some boobies, unless, no shade. But this is someone focusing on their own path. This is someone that is not. This is someone that's still looking back, feeling a little bit sorry for himself, feeling regret and remorse for decisions that have already been made and that can't even be changed at this point, that still isn't present enough with his possibilities in real time to know that he has great potential ahead of him, that he doesn't have to be a victim of his circumstances or his surroundings, by that matter, that even if he's been through the worst of times, the worst of toxic vibrations, trauma, resistance, control or projection, whatever he's been through, he still has the power to answer to his highest calling of healing, do something different, literally change his mind by way of so-called repentance, as we say, which just means to change your mind and do something different on account of the change of mentality, to operate in the power of choice to do something different. This is before the action even comes. This is someone that's unstable in his projection and therefore is making he's insecure in his projections of himself and his surroundings, and so therefore makes unstable actions, choices. This is actually even also a spirit of procrastination, because he's stuck stagnant in one place looking back when he should be facing forward. Now, thankfully, he's looking at healing, which hopefully he makes up his mind to go and get or receive in that regard. But the card in and of itself is someone that should be about to wrap up a cycle of toxicity and struggle and trauma and drama. But if he continues to look backwards or look around him instead of looking inside of him, he actually may miss the opportunity to start a cycle afresh and anew, and to be something different than what he's experienced, to have something different, to do something different than he has in the past. This is a great disparity here. Which one will you be? Which one are you? Are you the star, or are you, I don't even know what to call him. I don't want to be rude, but Are you the star? I guess is the only question that matters. Are you the star of your own show, of your own life? Or are you some supporting character in somebody else's, there it is, in somebody else's movie or story or book, playing a supporting role when you should be the lead, the main character? It's up to you. Anybody watching me and really feeling me on what I'm saying, I know you're the star. So I'm saying that rhetorically. The ultimate encouragement with this message here is to be the star that you are unapologetically. Continue to be so. Continue to shine. Express your brilliance, which each day, if you get one more day, if you get 10 more days, if you get a lifetime, if you get an eternity, within that span of breath, you have the permission to shine as brightly and brilliantly as you possibly can within your determination between the supreme source that you submit and or surrender to, however you choose to see, or co-create with, however you see it. That's your business, pretty much. So handle your business accordingly, okay? And we applaud you in the meantime for the decision to do so. You're doing amazing. Just keep on shining. All right. So that's all I have to say today. Have a wonderful day. Yeah. Have a wonderful day. Just stay focused, y'all. You know, don't let any projection dull your shine. Don't let anything make you feel like you're not worthy, whether it be intimately, generally, globally, universally. Stay focused on your highest prospect and potential at this time, because there's a lot of distractions around that are trying to keep you from cultivating this divine inheritance, evolving, ascending, and transcending cycles of trauma that have been expired now long time ago. They've been expired, but energies have been able to keep us going backwards and going back into it unbeknownst to us, just by way of us being hesitant to make a decision on what we truly deserve. So see the forest for the trees and all the projections that are going on in the news and the media and socially, intimately, collectively, even in YouTube, wherever it is, there's some message that's being projected that would want to be an adverse energy to what you know is true for you. So just stay focused right now. Stay focused on what is real right now, what you can control, which is you right now, and the power of choice and decision that you possess that's been inherited unto you since you were born. You came here with that power. You just didn't know it for ultimately for the obstruction of those caregivers and caretakers, dare I say parents, were good, better, and different, that ultimately made the choices for you. But now you are empowered and encouraged, incited, employed to take that power back in every way, shape, and form and operate it in the most high frequency capacity that you can do so. So God bless, good luck, much bliss to you in all you do. And until next time, peace.